The morning sun painted the Montana sky in soft orange and pink colors as Jack Murphy walked across his land. His boots made quiet sounds on the grass that was still wet from the night's rain. The air smelled fresh and clean, the way it always did after a storm. Jack had been walking this same path for 3 years now, ever since he moved to this ranch after his wife died. At 45 years old, Jack was a tall man with strong hands and kind eyes that had seen too much sadness. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the sides, and his face had lines from too many days working under the sun. But he was still strong, still able to work hard every day, taking care of his cattle and fixing things around the ranch. The Dow ranch was big, almost 2,000 acres of rolling hills and green grass. There were old oak trees scattered around the land, and a small creek that ran through the back part of his property. Jack loved this place. It was quiet and peaceful, far away from the noise and rush of the city. Sometimes he went for days without seeing another person, and that was just fine with him. Today felt different, though. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Maybe it was because of the storm last night. The wind had been so strong that it knocked down some tree branches, and the rain had been coming down hard for hours. He was walking toward the creek to check if any trees had fallen across the water. As he got closer to the creek, Jack could hear the sound of water flowing over rocks. The storm had made the creek run faster and higher than usual. He walked along the bank looking for any damage. That's when he saw it. At first, Jack thought it was just a pile of old clothes, or maybe a bag of garbage that someone had thrown away. It was caught against a big log that had fallen into the water years ago. The thing was brown and dirty, about the size of a person. Jack almost walked past it, but then he heard something that made his blood turn cold. A voice, a weak, scared voice calling for help. "Help me," the voice said. It was so quiet that Jack almost missed it over the sound of the water. "Please, I can't breathe." Jack stopped walking and listened carefully. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the creek. Then he heard it again. "Please open it, I can't breathe." Jack's heart started beating fast. The voice was coming from inside that brown thing by the log. It wasn't garbage at all. It was a big sack, and there was someone inside it. Jack ran toward the creek, his boots splashing in the shallow water near the bank. As he got closer, he could see that it was a large burlap sack, the kind that farmers use to carry grain or potatoes. It was tied shut with thick rope, and something inside was moving. "I'm here," Jack called out as he reached the sack. "I'm going to help you." The voice from inside the sack was a woman's voice, and she sounded very scared and weak. "Please hurry," she said. I can't get enough air." Jack's hands shook as he tried to untie the rope. The knots were tight and wet from the creek water, making them hard to loosen. He pulled out his pocket knife and started cutting through the rope, as fast as he could. "Just hold on," Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was racing. "I'm almost got it." The rope was thick and the knife was old, but Jack kept cutting. He could hear the woman inside breathing hard like she was having trouble getting air. Finally, the last piece of rope came loose. Jack pulled the top of the sack open and looked inside. What he saw made him feel sick and angry at the same time. Inside the sack was a young woman, maybe in her 20s. Her long black hair was messy and dirty, and her face was bruised. Her clothes were torn and muddy. Her hands were tied behind her back with duct tape, and there was tape over her mouth too. Her dark eyes looked up at Jack with fear and hope. "It's okay," Jack said softly as he carefully helped her sit up. "You're safe now." He gently pulled the tape off her mouth, trying not to hurt her. The woman took a big breath of fresh air and started coughing. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was rough and dry. "Thank you so much." Jack used his knife to cut the tape around her hands. Her wrists were red and sore where the tape had been too tight. She tried to move her arms, but they were stiff from being tied for so long. "How long have you been in there?" Jack asked as he helped her out of the sack. "I don't know," she said, rubbing her wrists. Maybe 2 days, 3? I lost track." Jack looked at the woman more carefully. She was Asian, with a pretty face that would have been beautiful if it wasn't bruised and dirty. She was wearing jeans and a blue shirt that were both torn and stained. Her hands were small but looked strong, like she was used to working. "What's your name?" Jack asked. "Amy," she said. "Amy Chen. I'm from Seattle." "I'm Jack Murphy. This is my ranch." He looked around to make sure they were alone. "Amy, who did this to you?" Amy tried to stand up, but her legs were too weak. Jack caught her before she could fall. "I don't know. Their names," she said. "There were 2 men, maybe 3. They grabbed me when I was hiking." "Hiking? Where?" "In the national forest about 10 miles from here. I was alone." Amy's voice broke and she started to cry. "I was so stupid to go alone." Jack felt a wave of anger toward the men who had done this. "You're not stupid," he said firmly. "This is not your fault." Amy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "They put me in the back of a truck. I remember driving for a long time. Then they put me in that sack and I thought I was going to die." Jack helped Amy walk to a big rock where she could sit down. She was shaking, partly from cold and partly from fear. Jack took off his jacket and put it around her shoulders. "Why? Did they let you go?" Jack asked. "I mean, how did you end up in the creek?" Amy shook her head. "They didn't let me go. I heard them talking about getting rid of me. They were going to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Jack understood. These men had been planning to kill Amy. Somehow she had ended up in the creek instead. Maybe they thought she was already dead. Maybe something had gone wrong with their plan. "We need to call the police," Jack said. He pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. The storm last night had knocked down some phone towers. "My phone," Amy said suddenly. "Do you see my phone anywhere?" Jack looked around the creek bank but didn't see anything except mud and wet leaves. "They probably took it," he said. Amy nodded. "They took everything. My backpack, my wallet, my car keys." "Your car?" "I parked at the trailhead. A blue Honda." Amy looked worried. "They probably took that too." Jack stood up and looked around again. The creek was in a lonely part of his ranch, far from the main road. If those men had dumped Amy here, they might come back to make sure she was dead. They needed to get away from this place. "Can you walk?" Jack asked. Amy tried to stand up again. This time, with Jack's help, she was able to stay on her feet. "I think so," she said, "but not very far. My house is about a mile from here. Do you think you can make it that far?" Amy nodded, even though Jack could see she was still very weak. "I'll try." They started walking slowly across the field toward Jack's house. Amy leaned on Jack's arm for support. Every few minutes they had to stop so Amy could rest. "Jack," Amy said as they walked. "Why do you think they dumped me by the creek?" Jack had been thinking about the same thing. Maybe they were planning to come back later, or maybe something scared them off. What if they're still around? Jack didn't want to scare Amy more than she already was, but he was worried about the same thing. "We'll be safe at my house," he said. "I have guns there and we can try to call for help." As they walked, Jack kept looking around for any sign of danger. The fields were empty except for some of his cattle in the distance. Everything looked normal, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Amy was getting tired, quickly. Her breathing was heavy and she was walking slower and slower. Jack could see that she needed food and water and medical attention. "Almost there," Jack said as his house came into view. It was a simple white farmhouse with a red roof and a big front porch. There were flowers planted around the front steps, flowers that Jack's wife had planted before she died. When they finally reached the house, Jack helped Amy up the front steps and into the living room. He made her sit down on the couch and brought her a glass of water and some crackers. Amy drank the water like she hadn't had any in days, which was probably true. "Thank you," she said again. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "You don't need to thank me," Jack said. "Any decent person would have done the same thing." Jack went to his landline phone, but it was dead too. The storm had knocked out the phone lines as well as the cell towers. He tried his radio, but all he got was static. "The storm knocked everything out," Jack said. "But don't worry. The phone company will fix the lines soon, probably by tomorrow." Amy looked scared again. What if those men come looking for me? Jack sat down in his chair across from Amy. I won't let anyone hurt you, he said. I promise. Looking at Amy sitting on his couch, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. A sense of purpose. Someone needed his help, and he was going to make sure she was safe. For the first time since his wife died, Jack felt like his life had meaning again. But deep down, Jack knew that saving Amy was just the beginning. Whoever had kidnapped her was still out there, and they might come looking for her. Jack was going to have to be ready for whatever came next. Amy fell asleep on Jack's couch within minutes of drinking the water. Her body was exhausted from being trapped in that sack for so long. Jack covered her with a soft blanket and let her rest while he tried to figure out what to do next. Jack walked around his house, checking all the windows and doors to make sure they were locked. He pulled out his hunting rifle from the gun cabinet and loaded it, then put it by the front door where he could reach it quickly. He wasn't taking any chances. While Amy slept, Jack tried the phone again every hour, but the line was still dead. He also tried his old CB radio, the one he used to talk to other ranchers in the area, but all he could hear was static and broken voices too far away to understand. The storm had really messed things up. Jack could see from his kitchen window that power lines were down along the main road. Tree branches were scattered everywhere, and there was standing water in the low spots of his fields. It would probably take days for everything to get fixed. Amy woke up around sunset looking confused about where she was. For a moment, Jack saw panic in her eyes until she remembered what had happened. It's okay, Jack said gently. You're safe. You're at my house. Amy sat up slowly, wincing from pain in her ribs. How long was I asleep? About 6 hours. It's almost dark now. Jack had made some soup while she was sleeping. Are you hungry? You need to eat something. Amy nodded. She was very hungry. Jack helped her to the kitchen table and gave her a bowl of chicken soup and some bread. Amy ate like she hadn't had food in days. This is so good, Amy said between bites. Thank you for taking care of me. Tell me what happened, Jack said, sitting across from her at the table. Take your time. Amy put down her spoon and thought for a moment. I came here for work, she said. I'm an accountant. I work for a company that investigates financial crimes. Like what kind of crimes? Money laundering, tax evasion, fraud. Companies hire us when they think someone is stealing money or hiding it illegally. Amy took another sip of soup. I was sent here to look into a business in the nearby town. Jack knew the town Amy was talking about. It was called Pine Ridge, about 20 miles from his ranch. It was a small place with maybe 3,000 people, the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else. What kind of business? Jack asked. A construction company called Rocky Mountain Builders. They've been getting a lot of big contracts lately, more than a small town company should be able to handle. Someone thought they might be doing something illegal with the money. Amy explained that she had been in Pine Ridge for a week, looking at financial records and talking to people. She was staying at the only hotel in town and trying to keep a low profile. I found some things that didn't make sense, Amy said. The company was getting payments from businesses that don't exist. They were moving money through fake bank accounts. It looked like they were washing money for someone else. Money laundering? Yes. Taking dirty money and making it look clean by running it through the construction business. Amy's voice got quieter. I think I was getting close to figuring out who was really behind it. Jack poured Amy more soup. So, you think these people kidnapped you because of what you found? Amy nodded. I went hiking on Sunday morning, 3 days ago. I like to hike when I'm working on a difficult case. It helps me think. She looked sad. I was alone on the trail when 2 men grabbed me from behind. Can you describe them? One was tall and thin with blonde hair. The other was shorter, but really muscular, with a shaved head. They both looked like they'd done this kind of thing before. Amy shivered remembering them. They knew my name. They knew why I was in town. This worried Jack. If these men knew who Amy was and why she was there, it meant they had been watching her. They might also know that she was missing and come looking for her. Did they say anything to you? Jack asked. The tall one did most of the talking. He said I was asking too many questions about things that weren't my business. He wanted to know what I had found and who I had told. What did you tell them? Amy looked down at her hands. I was so scared. I told them I hadn't found anything important yet. I said I was just getting started with the investigation. Did they believe you? I don't think so. They kept asking me about my computer and my files. They wanted to know if I had sent any reports to my boss. Amy's voice started shaking. They said they were going to make sure I never sent any reports to anyone. Jack reached across the table and touched Amy's hand. You're safe now, he said. They can't hurt you here. Amy looked up at Jack with tears in her eyes. But what if they come looking for me? What if they find us? Jack had been thinking about the same thing. We'll deal with that if it happens. Right now, you need to rest and get better. After dinner, Jack showed Amy to the guest bedroom. It had been his wife's sewing room before she died, but Jack had turned it into a place for visitors. Though he rarely had any, the bed had clean sheets and there was a window that looked out over the back fields. There are clean clothes in the dresser, Jack said. They belong to my wife. You're about the same size. Amy looked surprised. Your wife? She died 3 years ago. Cancer. Jack's voice was quiet. Her name was Linda. She would have wanted you to use her things. Amy touched Jack's arm gently. I'm sorry for your loss. Jack nodded. He still missed Linda every day, but talking about her didn't hurt as much as it used to. Get some sleep, we'll figure out what to do in the morning. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Amy's story and what it meant. If she was right about the money laundering, then there were dangerous people involved, people who were willing to kidnap and probably kill to keep their secret safe. Jack got up several times during the night to check on Amy and to look out the windows. Everything was quiet and dark. His cattle were sleeping in the field, and there was no sign of anyone around. But Jack kept his rifle close to his bed just in case. In the morning, Amy looked much better. The bruises on her face were still dark, but she seemed stronger. She had showered and put on some of Linda's clothes, a simple blue dress that fit her well. How are you feeling? Jack asked as he made breakfast. Better. Still sore, but better. Amy helped Jack set the table. Jack, I need to ask you something. What? Do you have a computer? I need to try to contact my boss and the FBI. They need to know what I found and what happened to me. Jack did have an old computer that he used to keep track of his ranch business, but it was connected to the internet through the phone line, which was still not working. The phone lines are still down, Jack said. No internet either. Amy looked disappointed. How long do you think it will take to fix them? Could be today, could be a few more days. Depends on how much damage the storm did. After breakfast, Jack and Amy walked out to the front porch. The morning was sunny and warm, and Amy seemed to enjoy being outside in the fresh air. They could see for miles across Jack's land from the porch. It's beautiful here, Amy said. So peaceful. It is most of the time, Jack agreed. I moved here after Linda died. I needed somewhere quiet to think. Where did you live before? Denver. I was a police officer there for 20 years. Jack sat down on the porch swing. I got tired of the city and all the crime and noise. Amy sat down next to him on the swing. A police officer? That makes me feel even safer. Jack smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in a long time. I'm not a cop anymore, but I remember how to protect people. They sat quietly for a while, enjoying the morning sun. Amy seemed more relaxed than she had since Jack found her. For a moment, it was easy to forget about the danger she was in, but then Amy pointed to something in the distance. Jack, is that a car? Jack looked where Amy was pointing. Far down his long driveway, he could see dust being kicked up by a vehicle. Someone was coming to his ranch. Jack stood up quickly. Get inside, he said to Amy. Right now. Amy could hear the worry in Jack's voice. Is it them? I don't know, but we're not taking any chances. Jack picked up his rifle from beside the door. Go to the guest bedroom and lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." Amy hurried inside while Jack stayed on the porch, watching the approaching vehicle. As it got closer, Jack could see it was a black SUV with tinted windows. The same kind of vehicle that kidnappers might use. Jack's heart started beating faster. He checked his rifle to make sure it was loaded and ready. If these were the men who had hurt Amy, they were going to find out that Jack Murphy was not someone to mess with. The SUV stopped in front of Jack's house, but nobody got out right away. Jack could see shapes moving inside the vehicle, but he couldn't tell how many people were in there or what they wanted. Jack stepped to the edge of his porch, holding his rifle where the people in the SUV could see it clearly. He wanted them to know that he was armed and ready to defend himself and Amy. Finally, the driver's door opened and a man got out. He was tall and thin with blonde hair, just like Amy had described one of her kidnappers. Jack's grip tightened on his rifle. "Good morning," the man called out in a friendly voice. "Are you Jack Murphy?" "Who wants to know?" Jack called back, not moving from his defensive position. The man reached into his jacket, and Jack raised his rifle. But instead of a weapon, the man pulled out what looked like a badge. "My name is Agent Davis," the man said. "I'm with the FBI." After the fake FBI agents left, Jack knew they didn't have much time. Those men would be back, and next time they wouldn't be pretending to be law enforcement. Next time they would come with guns and bad intentions. Jack spent the rest of the morning preparing his house for what might happen. He moved Amy to the basement, which was the safest place in the house. The basement had thick concrete walls and only one small window that was too high for anyone to climb through easily. "I know it's not comfortable down here," Jack said as he brought down some blankets and pillows. "But it's the safest place if those men come back." Amy looked around the basement. It was full of Jack's old things, boxes of memories, Linda's clothes that he couldn't bring himself to give away, and his old police equipment from Denver. There was also a gun safe in the corner. "Jack, tell me the truth," Amy said. "How much danger are we really in?" Jack sat down on an old chair next to where Amy was sitting on a makeshift bed. "I think we're in serious danger," he said honestly. "Those men this morning weren't real FBI agents. Real agents would have had proper badges and paperwork. They would have followed the law." "How do you know so much about how FBI agents act?" "I worked with them a few times when I was a police officer in Denver. Plus, everything about those men felt wrong. The way they talked, the way they looked at my house, the way they threatened to come back." Jack shook his head. "Real FBI agents? Don't act like that." Amy pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "So what do you think they'll do next?" "They'll probably watch the house for a while to see if you're really here. Then they'll come back tonight or tomorrow with more men and try to take you by force." "Maybe I should just leave," Amy said. "I don't want to put you in danger because of me." Jack looked at Amy seriously. "Where would you go? Your car is gone, the phones are down, and those men are probably watching all the roads out of here. You're safer with me than you would be trying to run." Amy knew Jack was right, but she felt terrible about putting him in danger. "I'm so sorry I got you involved in this," she said. "You didn't get me involved. I chose to help you, and I'm going to keep helping you until this is over." Jack stood up and walked to his gun safe. "Amy, I need to ask you something important. Have you ever used a gun?" Amy shook her head. "No, never. My parents were against guns when I was growing up." Jack opened the gun safe and pulled out a small pistol. "This is a .38 revolver. It's not too big and it's easy to use." He checked to make sure it wasn't loaded, then handed it to Amy. "It might save your life." Amy held the gun like it might bite her. "I don't think I could shoot someone. You might feel different if someone is trying to kill you," Jack said gently. "But I hope you never have to find out." Jack spent the next hour teaching Amy how to use the pistol, how to hold it, how to aim it, how to pull the trigger. Amy was a quick learner, and by the end of the lesson she was hitting empty cans from across the basement. "Remember," Jack said as Amy practiced, "if you have to use this, don't think about it too much. Just point and shoot. Your life is more important than worrying about hurting someone who's trying to hurt you." While Amy practiced with the gun, Jack told her more about what he thought was going to happen. "They'll probably come at night," he said. Most likely they'll try to surround the house and force their way in. How many do you think there will be? At least 3 or 4, maybe more if they're really serious about this. Jack reloaded Amy's pistol with real bullets. But we have some advantages too. Like what? I know this house better than they do. I know every room, every door, every window. I also know the land around here. If we have to run, I know where to go. Jack checked his own rifle again. Plus, I've been in situations like this before. When you were a police officer? Yes, and before that in the military. I was in the Army for 4 years before I became a cop. Jack's voice got quiet. I've been in firefights before. I know how to handle myself when things get dangerous. Amy felt a little better knowing that Jack had experience with dangerous situations. But she was still scared. What if there are too many of them? What if we can't fight them off? Jack had been thinking about the same thing. I have a backup plan, he said. If things go really bad, there's a tunnel that leads from this basement to the old barn behind the house. It was built during the Cold War by the family who owned this place before me. They were worried about nuclear bombs. Jack showed Amy a hidden door in the corner of the basement that she hadn't noticed before. Behind the door was a narrow tunnel that went underground for about 50 yards. The tunnel comes up inside the barn, Jack explained. From there we can get to my truck and try to escape. Why don't we just leave now? Amy asked. Because they're probably watching the house already. If we try to leave during the day, they'll see us and follow us. Our best chance is to wait until dark and see what happens. As the day went on, Jack kept checking the windows upstairs to see if anyone was watching his house. He couldn't see anyone, but that didn't mean they weren't there. Professional criminals knew how to stay hidden. Around lunchtime, Jack tried the phone again, but it was still dead. He also tried his CB radio, but all he could get was static. The storm had really knocked out communications in this area. I wish we could call for help, Amy said as she ate a sandwich Jack had made for her. Even if we could call, it would take the police at least an hour to get here from town. That's plenty of time for those men to do whatever they came here to do. Amy thought about this. Jack, what if we're wrong? What if those really were FBI agents this morning? Jack had been wondering the same thing. If they were real FBI agents, they would have come back with a warrant by now. They also would have brought more people and better identification. Jack shook his head. No, I'm sure they were the men who kidnapped you. As evening approached, Jack made Amy go back down to the basement while he continued watching for any sign of the kidnappers. The sun was getting low in the sky, and Jack knew that if the men were going to make their move, it would be soon. Around 8 o'clock, just as it was getting dark, Jack saw something that made his blood run cold. There were lights moving slowly along the tree line at the edge of his property. Not car lights, but small flashlights or maybe phone lights. Someone was sneaking up on his house. Jack quietly went down to the basement to tell Amy what he had seen. They're here, he whispered. At least 3 of them, maybe more. They're coming through the trees on the east side of the house. Amy's face went white with fear. What do we do? We stick to the plan. Stay down here and be quiet. If they get into the house, use the tunnel to get to the barn. I'll try to stop them before they get that far. Jack checked his rifle one more time and made sure he had extra bullets in his pockets. Amy, no matter what happens, don't come upstairs. Even if you hear gunshots, even if you think I'm in trouble, stay down here. Jack, I'm scared. Jack knelt down next to Amy and took her hands in his. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we're going to get through this together. Jack went back upstairs and turned off all the lights in the house. He wanted the kidnappers to think that everyone was asleep. Then he positioned himself at the living room window where he could see the front and side of the house. For about 20 minutes, everything was quiet. Jack was starting to wonder if he had imagined the lights in the trees. But then he heard a sound that made his heart start racing. Footsteps on his front porch. Jack gripped his rifle tighter and aimed it at the front door. Through the window, he could see the shadow of a man trying to look through the glass. The man was being very quiet and careful, just like a professional criminal would be. Then Jack heard another sound from the back of the house. More footsteps. and the sound of someone trying the back door. They were surrounding the house just like Jack had predicted. Jack had to make a decision. He could wait for them to break in and try to fight them inside the house, or he could take the offensive and try to scare them off before they got inside. Jack decided to act first. He opened the front door suddenly and stepped out onto the porch, with his rifle pointed at the man who was trying to look through his window. "Get off my property," Jack shouted loudly. "I'm armed and I'm not afraid to use this rifle." The man at the front door was surprised but didn't run away. Instead, he quickly pulled out his own gun and pointed it at Jack. "We know she's in there," the man shouted back. "Send her out and nobody gets hurt." Jack recognized the voice. It was the same man who had pretended to be an FBI agent that morning. "I told you this morning, there's nobody here but me." "You're lying," the man said. "We tracked her phone signal to this area." "That's impossible," Jack said. "Her phone was destroyed days ago," but even as Jack said it, he realized the man might be telling the truth. Maybe Amy's phone hadn't been destroyed. Maybe it was still working somehow, and these men had been using it to track her location. Jack heard the sound of breaking glass from inside his house. Someone had broken in through a window in the back. Now Jack was trapped between the man in front of him and whoever was inside his house. "It's over, old man," the man with the gun said. "There are 4 of us, and only 1 of you. Just give us the woman and we'll leave you alone." Jack rushed down the basement stairs, his rifle ready, but what he found surprised him. Amy wasn't being attacked by the kidnappers. Instead, she was standing by the hidden tunnel door with her pistol pointed at the basement stairs, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs. "Jack!" Amy yelled when she saw him. "There's someone trying to break through the basement window." Jack looked at the small basement window and saw a man's legs hanging through it. The man was stuck halfway through the window trying to squeeze, his body through the small opening. "Get back," Jack told Amy as he aimed his rifle at the window. The man in the window saw Jack's rifle and immediately tried to pull himself back outside, but he was stuck. His shoulders were too wide for the window frame. "Don't shoot," the man yelled. "I'm just trying to find the woman. We don't want to hurt anyone." Jack almost laughed at the lie. These men had already kidnapped Amy once and were planning to kill both of them. They definitely wanted to hurt people. "You have 3 seconds to get out of my house," Jack said coldly. 1, 2. The man struggled frantically to pull himself back through the window. Just as Jack was about to say 3, the man managed to free himself and disappeared back outside. But Jack could still hear other men moving around upstairs in his house. At least 2 more kidnappers were searching the rooms above them. "Amy, we need to use the tunnel," Jack said quietly. "Right now." Amy nodded and opened the hidden door that led to the underground tunnel. Jack followed her into the narrow passage, pulling the door closed behind them. The tunnel was dark and cramped. They had to crawl on their hands and knees to move through. Amy went first with a small flashlight that Jack had given her, and Jack followed close behind with his rifle. "How long is this tunnel?" Amy whispered as they crawled. "About 50 yards, just keep going straight." The tunnel smelled like dirt and old concrete. It was cold and damp, and Jack could hear water dripping somewhere in the darkness. He was glad that the people who built this tunnel had made it strong, because it had to support the weight of the ground above them. As they crawled through the tunnel, Jack could hear the kidnappers above them in the house. They were shouting at each other and breaking things as they searched for Amy. "She's not in the house," one man yelled. "Check the barn and the other buildings." Jack and Amy crawled faster. They needed to get to the barn before the kidnappers thought to look there. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. There was a wooden ladder that led up to a trap door in the floor of the barn. Jack climbed up first and carefully opened the trap door just a crack to look around. The barn was dark and quiet. Jack's truck was parked inside, just where he had left it, but he could see flashlight beams moving around outside the barn. The kidnappers were already searching the other buildings on his property. "We need to move fast," Jack whispered as he helped Amy climb out of the tunnel. They ran to Jack's truck, trying to be as quiet as possible. Jack had left the keys in the truck, which was lucky because he didn't have time to look for them. Just as Jack was about to start the truck, they heard footsteps outside the barn. Someone was coming. "Hide behind the truck," Jack whispered to Amy. They both crouched down behind the truck just as the barn door opened. A man with a flashlight walked into the barn, looking around carefully. Jack recognized him as the shorter man with the shaved head that Amy had described. This was definitely one of her kidnappers. The man walked slowly around the barn, shining his flashlight into every corner. He was being very thorough, and Jack knew it was only a matter of time before he found them. Jack made a quick decision. He stood up from behind the truck and pointed his rifle at the man. "Drop your weapon and get on the ground," Jack ordered. The man spun around, surprised to see Jack. He was holding a pistol, but he didn't have time to aim it before Jack had his rifle pointed at the man's chest. For a moment, the two men stared at each other. Jack could see the man calculating whether he could raise his pistol and shoot before Jack could pull the trigger on his rifle. "Don't even think about it," Jack said. "I was a police officer for 20 years. I know how to use this rifle, and I won't miss from this distance." The man slowly lowered his pistol and placed it on the ground. "You're making a mistake," he said. "That woman is a criminal. We're trying to bring her to justice. By kidnapping her and putting her in a sack?" Jack said, "That's not how justice works." Amy stood up from behind the truck, keeping her own pistol pointed at the man. "This is one of them," she told Jack. "This is one of the men who kidnapped me." The man looked at Amy with hatred in his eyes. "You should have minded your own business," he said. Now you're going to get this old man killed too." "Nobody's going to get killed if you cooperate," Jack said. "Amy, get some rope from the workbench. We're going to tie this guy up." As Amy went to get the rope, Jack kept his rifle trained on the kidnapper. "What's your name?" Jack asked. "I'm not telling you anything." "That's fine. The police can figure out who you are when they arrest you." The man laughed. "What police? The phones are down for miles around here. Nobody knows where you are and nobody's coming to help you." Jack knew the man was probably right about the phones still being down, but he also knew that eventually the phone lines would be fixed and help would come. Amy returned with the rope, and Jack had her tie the man's hands behind his back while he kept the rifle pointed at him. "There are still 2 more of them out there," Amy said as she finished tying the knots. "I know. We need to get out of here before they find us." Jack and Amy got into the truck while the tied-up kidnapper sat on the floor of the barn. Jack started the engine, which sounded very loud in the quiet night. "They're going to hear the truck," Amy said. "I know, but we don't have a choice. We need to get to town and find help." Jack drove the truck out of the barn and onto the dirt road that led to the main highway. Behind them, he could see flashlights moving around his house. The other kidnappers had heard the truck and were trying to figure out where it was coming from. As they drove down the dirt road, Jack's headlights suddenly illuminated another black SUV parked across the road, blocking their escape route. "They're trying to trap us," Amy said. Jack didn't slow down. Instead, he pressed harder on the gas pedal. "Hold on," he told Amy. The truck was old but powerful. Jack aimed it at the side of the SUV and crashed into it at full speed. The impact was tremendous, and both Jack and Amy were thrown forward against their seatbelts. But the truck kept going. The SUV was pushed off the road and into a ditch, and Jack's truck, though damaged, was still running. "Are you okay?" Jack asked Amy as they continued down the road. Amy was shaken up but not seriously hurt. "I think so. That was incredible." Jack's head was bleeding from where it had hit the steering wheel, but he kept driving. They needed to get as far away from his ranch as possible before the remaining kidnappers could organize a pursuit. As they drove toward town, Amy told Jack more about what she had discovered in her investigation. The construction company wasn't just laundering money. They were also involved in drug trafficking and human trafficking. The people behind it had connections to organized crime families from other states. That's why they were so desperate to stop me, Amy said. "I wasn't just threatening their money laundering operation. I was threatening their entire criminal network." Jack understood now why these men had been willing to kidnap and kill to protect their secrets. They weren't just small-time criminals. They were part of something much bigger and more dangerous. "How much evidence do you have?" Jack asked. "I have copies of financial records, bank statements, and email communications stored on a secure server in Seattle. If anything happened to me, my boss would eventually find it and turn it over to the FBI. Then why did they kidnap you instead of just killing you right away?" Amy thought about this. I think they wanted to find out how much I knew and who else I had told. They were probably planning to kill me once they were sure they had contained the investigation. As they got closer to town, Jack saw lights ahead on the road. It looked like police cars, which was exactly what they needed. But as they got closer, Jack realized something was wrong. The cars weren't police cars. They were more black SUVs, just like the ones the kidnappers had been using. "It's a roadblock," Amy said. "They're trying to stop us from getting to town." Jack slowed down as he tried to figure out what to do. There were at least 3 SUVs blocking the road, and he could see men with guns standing beside them. "How many people are involved in this?" Jack asked. "I don't know, maybe the whole construction company. Maybe other businesses in town too." Amy looked scared. "Jack, I think we're in more trouble than we realized." Jack turned the truck around and started driving back the way they had come. He needed to find another route to town or find somewhere safe to hide until help arrived. "Where are we going?" Amy asked. "I know another way to town. It's longer and the road isn't as good, but it might be our only choice." As Jack drove through the dark countryside, he realized that Amy had been right. They were in more trouble than he had realized. This wasn't just about 3 or 4 kidnappers. This was about an entire criminal organization that was willing to do anything to protect itself. But Jack also realized something else. For the first time in 3 years, Jack drove his damaged truck through the winding back roads for almost an hour, trying to find a way around the roadblocks. Amy sat beside him, watching for any sign of the black SUVs that seemed to be everywhere. "Jack, maybe we should find somewhere to hide until morning," Amy said. "We could wait for the phone lines to be fixed and then call for help." Jack had been thinking the same thing. His truck was making strange noises from the crash with the SUV, and he wasn't sure how much longer it would keep running. Plus, they were both exhausted from the stress and fear of the past few hours. "There's an old hunting cabin about 5 miles from here," Jack said. "It belongs to my neighbor, but he only uses it during deer season. We could hide there until we figure out our next move." Jack turned onto an even smaller dirt road that led deep into the forest. The cabin was hidden among tall pine trees, and unless someone knew exactly where to look, they would never find it. The cabin was small and simple, with just one room and a stone fireplace. There was no electricity or running water, but it would be safe and warm for the night. Jack parked the truck behind the cabin where it couldn't be seen from the road. Then he and Amy went inside and locked the door. "We should be safe here," Jack said as he started a fire in the fireplace. "Nobody knows about this place except me and old Pete, who owns it." Amy sat down on the simple wooden bed and finally allowed herself to relax a little. "Jack, I need to tell you something," she said. "What?" "I lied to you earlier about my investigation. I didn't just find evidence of money laundering. I found evidence of much worse things." Jack sat down across from Amy. "What kind of things?" Amy took a deep breath. "The construction company is a front for a drug smuggling operation. They're bringing illegal drugs up from Mexico and distributing them all over the western United States. They're also involved in human trafficking, bringing people across the border illegally and forcing them to work as slaves." Jack felt sick to his stomach. These criminals weren't just stealing money, they were destroying lives and causing incredible suffering. "How much evidence do you have?" Jack asked. "Enough to shut down the entire operation and send dozens of people to prison for the rest of their lives. But only if I can get the evidence to the right people in the FBI. That's why they're so desperate to stop you." Amy nodded. "If my investigation becomes public, it will destroy a criminal network worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They'll do anything to prevent that from happening." Jack stared into the fire, thinking about everything Amy had told him. "Amy, there's something I need to tell you too." "What?" "I'm not just a retired police officer. I used to work undercover investigations for the Denver Police Department. I specialized in organized crime cases." Jack looked at Amy seriously. "I know how these criminal organizations work, and I know how to bring them down." Amy looked surprised. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wanted to get you to safety first. But now I think we have a chance to do something more than just survive. I think we can actually stop these people." Jack explained his idea to Amy. Instead of just trying to escape and call for help, they could gather evidence of the criminal operation and document everything that had happened to them. With Jack's experience in undercover work and Amy's financial investigation skills, they could build a case that would be impossible for the criminals to cover up. "It's dangerous," Jack said. "But if we can pull it off, we can make sure these people never hurt anyone else again." Amy thought about Jack's plan. It was risky, but it was also their best chance to bring the criminals to justice. "What do you need me to do?" Over the next several hours, Jack and Amy worked together to plan their counterattack against the criminal organization. Jack used his knowledge of police investigation techniques, while Amy used her expertise in financial crimes to figure out how to gather the evidence they would need. The first step was to get back to Jack's ranch and retrieve Amy's hidden backup files from her laptop, which she had concealed in her hotel room in Pine Ridge. But they also needed to document the crimes that had been committed against them and gather evidence of the kidnapping attempt. "We need to be smart about this," Jack said. "These people have shown they're willing to kill to protect their secrets. We can't give them another chance to hurt us." As dawn approached, Jack and Amy finalized their plan. They would return to town, but not to ask for help from the local police who might be corrupted by the criminal organization. Instead, they would go directly to the state police headquarters in the capital city, which was about 100 miles away. But first, they needed to get proof of what had happened at Jack's ranch. They needed photographs of the damage, evidence of the break-in, and most importantly, they needed to find the kidnapper that Jack had tied up in the barn. "If he's still there, he could be our key witness," Jack said. "He could tell us who's running this operation and how many people are involved." Amy was nervous about going back to the ranch. What if it's a trap? What if they're waiting for us? "Then we'll be ready for them," Jack said. "This time we're not running away. This time we're fighting back." Jack and Amy left the cabin just as the sun was rising. The morning was clear and beautiful, which seemed strange considering all the terrible things that had happened during the night. As they drove back toward Jack's ranch, they could see that the phone and power lines were being repaired. Utility trucks were working along the highway, and Jack could see that communication would be restored soon. "Look," Amy said, pointing to a line of police cars heading in the opposite direction. "Real police cars this time." Jack smiled grimly. "Word is getting out about what happened last night. The criminals won't be able to hide much longer." When they reached Jack's ranch, they were surprised by what they found. The place was crawling with real FBI agents and state police officers. Jack's house was surrounded by official vehicles, and investigators were taking photographs and collecting evidence. Jack parked his truck at the edge of his property and walked toward the house with Amy. A young FBI agent approached them. "Are you Jack Murphy?" the agent asked. "Yes, I am. This is Amy Chen, the woman who was kidnapped." The agent's eyes widened. "Ms. Chen, we've been looking for you for 4 days. Your boss in Seattle contacted us when you didn't check in." Amy felt a wave of relief wash over her. Finally, they were safe. Finally, they could get help from people who could actually stop the criminals. "Agent, there's a lot you need to know," Amy said. "This kidnapping is connected to a much larger criminal investigation." Over the next several hours, Jack and Amy told their story to the FBI agents. They described the kidnapping, the fake FBI agents, the attack on Jack's ranch, and everything they had discovered about the criminal organization. The FBI agents were very interested in Amy's financial evidence. "Ms. Chen, if what you're telling us is true, this could be one of the largest criminal organizations we've investigated in this region." "It's all true," Amy said, "and I have the evidence to prove it." The kidnapper that Jack had tied up in the barn was still there when the FBI found him. He had been discovered by the other criminals, but they had fled when they saw the police cars approaching the ranch. Under questioning, the kidnapper revealed the names of the people running the criminal organization and provided details about their operations. His testimony, combined with Amy's financial evidence, gave the FBI everything they needed to start making arrests. Within a week, dozens of people were arrested in connection with the criminal network. The construction company was shut down, millions of dollars in illegal money was seized, and the drug and human trafficking operations were completely dismantled. Amy became a hero in the law enforcement community for her brave investigation and her willingness to risk her life to expose the criminals. She was offered a job with the FBI, but she turned it down. "I want to stay here," Amy told Jack as they sat on his front porch a month after the arrests. "I want to help you rebuild your ranch and start a new life." Jack's house had been damaged during the attack, but it was being repaired. More importantly, Jack felt like his life was being repaired too. Having Amy around had brought joy and purpose back into his world. "Are you sure?" Jack asked. "You could have an important career in Seattle. You could work on big cases and make a lot of money." Amy smiled and took Jack's hand. "I'd rather work on small cases and make a quiet life with you." 6 months later, Amy had moved permanently to Montana. She started a small accounting practice in Pine Ridge, helping local businesses with their finances and investigating financial crimes for law enforcement agencies when needed. Jack's ranch was thriving again. He had hired some local workers to help with the cattle, and he was even thinking about expanding his operation. But the best part was that he was no longer lonely. Amy had brought life and laughter back to the ranch. One evening, as they sat, watching the sunset from their front porch, Amy asked Jack a question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Jack, do you think we would have met if I hadn't been kidnapped? Do you think we would have found each other some other way?" Jack thought about it for a moment. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm glad we found each other, no matter how it happened." Amy leaned against Jack's shoulder. "Me too." As they watched the sun disappear behind the mountains, both Jack and